Night shifts that lead to abandoned buildings, mysterious phone calls from nowhere, and chilling abominations are just a few of the disturbing encounters our featured boys in blue have faced on late patrols. Are you sure you're ready to brave these 5 scary stories from police officers? Number 5. The Unseen Watcher. It was a quiet night, and I was on patrol in a familiar neighborhood, trying to stay focused despite the monotony. The street lamps cast long shadows, creating an eerie atmosphere. As I turned the corner onto Elmwood Avenue, something caught my eye. Standing beneath a flickering lamppost, barely visible, was a figure wearing a tattered overcoat. Instinctively, I approached, thinking it might be a homeless person seeking shelter. But as I drew closer, this figure seemed to melt into the darkness, and my heart skipped a beat. I shook it off as a trick of the light, but an uneasy feeling lingered. A while later, I saw this same figure again, this time at the edge of a park, hidden amongst the trees. My heart raced, and my training kicked in, telling me to investigate. "Police! Hold it right there!" I shouted, but the figure seemed unfazed, almost ethereal. As I reached the spot where it stood, it had vanished yet again. Over the next few nights, these encounters multiplied. The Unseen Watcher, as I had dubbed this mysterious figure, appeared on street corners, near houses, and at playgrounds. Always silent, and always vanishing before I could get close enough. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was observing me, studying my every movement. I started losing sleep over these incidents, haunted by the encounters and unanswered questions. My colleagues began teasing me about chasing ghosts, but I knew there was something more to it. It wasn't just a figment of my imagination. Others in the neighborhood had noticed the eerie presence as well. One night, as I stood beneath a lamppost trying to gather my thoughts, I heard a soft whisper carried on the winds. It seemed to call my name, chilling me to the bone. "Sam," the voice seemed to sigh. I whipped around, my flashlight illuminating my surroundings. There was no one there, but the feeling of being watched intensified. As weeks passed, this unseen watcher grew bolder, appearing closer and closer to me during patrols. I became obsessed, determined to uncover the truth behind this haunting figure. I sought help from experts in the paranormal, but they dismissed it as mere urban legends or my overactive imagination. One night, driven by desperation, I set up surveillance cameras around my usual neighborhood. I hoped to catch a glimpse of this unseen figure and finally prove that I wasn't losing my mind. The next morning, I reviewed the footage with trembling hands, and to my horror, the recordings revealed nothing but ordinary streets and empty sidewalks. Frustration and fear consumed me. My colleagues started to worry, but I couldn't let it go. I had to confront this entity and put an end to this torment, to this harassment. On a moonlit night, I decided to stake out the same area where I'd first spotted the Watcher. In the darkness, I waited, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Suddenly, I felt a presence behind me, and a cold shiver ran down my spine. I turned around to see a shadowy figure, its eyes gleaming in the dim light. My pulse quickened, and I struggled to find my voice. What do you want?" I stammered. The figure stood silent, but I sensed a surge of emotions emanating from it. It felt lost, trapped between the worlds, seeking something it could no longer find. Taking a deep breath, I mustered my courage. "You don't belong here. It's time to move on." To my astonishment, the Watcher beckoned me forward and then turned, moving toward an abandoned building nearby. Cautiously, I followed, my flashlight illuminating the path before me. Inside, the Watcher led me through decaying corridors until we reached a dusty, dimly lit room in the back. And there, lying on the floor, was a man's lifeless body. Both shock and grief washed over me as I realized that this unseen Watcher was no malevolent spirit, but a restless soul seeking justice for its own murder. This revelation sent shivers down my spine, and I understood why it had been reaching out to me. The Watcher slowly faded away, its purpose fulfilled. I called for backup and reported the discovery of the body. The investigation that followed revealed the truth behind the man's death and eventually led to the arrest of his murderer. As I stood alone in this abandoned building, a sense of closure washed over me. The unseen Watcher had found its peace, and I had played a part in delivering justice to a soul that had been trapped in the mortal realm. From that night forward, encounters with the unseen Watcher ceased and the neighborhood returned to its usual calm. Though I'll never forget the eerie presence, I now understand that not all mysteries are mere illusions, that sometimes the truth lies hidden within the shadows, waiting to be revealed by those who are willing to listen. Number 4, The Whispering Alley. The night was unusually quiet as I patrolled familiar and dimly lit streets, my footsteps echoing through empty alleyways. This neighborhood was notorious for its unsettling vibes, but tonight there was an inexplicable tension in the air that sent shivers down my spine. As I turned a corner, I found myself facing an alleyway that locals spoke of in hushed tones, the Whispering Alley. This narrow passage was shrouded in darkness, and its walls were covered in faded graffiti. Despite my instincts urging me to steer clear, an inexplicable curiosity drew me closer and closer. With each step, an unsettling feeling grew over me, as if unseen eyes were watching my every movement. The echo of my footsteps were accompanied by a faint, haunting whisper that seemed to emanate from the very walls themselves. I shook off the unease, attributing the strange sounds to the wind whistling through the narrow space. But as I listened more closely, the whispers took on a peculiar coherence, as if they were trying to convey a message. A chill ran down my spine as I strained to make out the words. The voices were indistinct, like a chorus of lost souls. Both fear and fascination wrestled within me, but I couldn't resist the pull, the urge to uncover the secrets of what the whispers might hold. As my heart pounded, I ventured deeper into the darkened passage. The whispers grew louder, enveloping me in an otherworldly symphony of sounds. They seemed to call out to me, their haunting melody resonating in my very soul. "What do you want?" I called out into the shadows, unsure if I was addressing spirits or simply my own mind. The whispers momentarily hushed, and then a single voice emerged, clear and desperate. "Help us! Find us!" Determined to unravel this mystery, I pressed forward. The alley seemed to stretch infinitely, leading me further and further into its enigmatic embrace. Its whispers intensified, an emotional tapestry of longing and sorrow that pulled at my heartstrings. Finally, I reached a dead end, a wall adorned with ancient symbols and cryptic messages. The voices now surged with urgency, as if guiding me to a long-lost truth. Tentatively, I touched the wall, and in that moment a torrent of images flooded my mind. I played witness to countless tragedies that had unfolded in this very alley, to a forgotten tale of lost souls yearning to be remembered. With this clarity came a sense of purpose. The restless spirits needed closure, and I was a conduit to provide it. As I traced the symbols with my fingers, an ethereal energy enveloped me, and a sense of profound connection filled the air. Then, the alley fell eerily silent. The whispers had ceased, replaced by an overwhelming feeling of peace. The trapped souls here had found their release. They had finally found someone who'd listen. Exhilaration mixed with relief as I stepped away from this now tranquil alleyway. A weight had lifted, and I knew that I had fulfilled a purpose far beyond the realm of the ordinary. Number 3. Night Patrol. The night was shrouded in an eerie silence as Detective Harris and I cautiously stepped into the decaying abyss of the abandoned house. The air itself felt heavy, and an ominous chill crawled up our spines as we ventured further inside. Creaking floorboards groaned beneath our weight, and the flickering light from our flashlights seemed to cast sinister shadows on the peeling wallpaper. As we moved deeper into the house, an unease in the atmosphere grew palpable. Then suddenly, in the dim glow, I caught a glimpse of something lurking in the shadows, a creature unlike anything I'd ever seen before. It was a warped hominid figure, hunched and gnarled, with elongated limbs and grotesque appendages that resembled twisted claws. Its eyes gleamed with an unnatural luminescence, and its skin appeared to shift in shades of sickly blue. Harris and I froze, our breaths caught in our throats as we stared at this nightmarish thing before us. It seemed to regard us with a predatory curiosity, as if it had been waiting for this moment to reveal itself. "This can't be real," Harris whispered, his voice trembling. My mind struggled to process what my eyes were seeing, but the undeniable truth was that we were facing something far beyond our world. As if sensing our fear, the creature emitted a low, guttural growl that seemed to reverberate through the very walls of the house. It took a step forward, its unnatural movement sending shivers down my spine. "We need to get out of here," I whispered, but my feet felt glued to the floor. With an unnerving agility, this creature lunged at us, its twisted claws swiping through the air. Instinct took over, and we barely managed to evade its attack. Hearts pounding, I yelled to Harris, "We have to find another way out." As we darted through the corridors, the creature pursued us with an almost inhuman speed. It seemed to toy with us, relishing the terror it had instilled in our hearts. Finally, we reached a narrow staircase leading to an upper floor. We climbed it in a frenzy, but as we reached the landing, the creature cornered us, its glowing eyes fixated upon us with a menacing glare. In a desperate attempt to escape, I drew my pistol and fired 5 rounds into the behemoth. They connected, causing the creature to stagger momentarily, but disturbingly, it seemed otherwise unfazed. Seizing this opportunity, we bolted into a nearby room, slammed the door shut behind us, and locked it. Panting heavily, we searched this room for an alternative exit, but it seemed like there was no way out. Panic clawed at our minds as we realized we were trapped. We tried our radios, but were greeted with nothing but static. Then, with a low, sinister clicking sound that seemed almost like a chuckle, the creature's distorted face appeared in the gap beneath the door. It seemed to revel in our terror. "We can't just stay here," Harris muttered, his voice quivering. We then realized that our only hope was a small dusty vent in the corner of the room. We pried it open, our fear of the unknown outweighing the fear of what lay beyond. With adrenaline-fueled determination, we crawled through the tight space, emerging into a dark and cramped crawl space beneath the house. It was damp and suffocating, but we had to escape. As we scrambled through the darkness, we heard the creature's enraged snarls from behind us. It seemed that it couldn't follow us into the narrow passage, but we knew that it was only a matter of time before it found another way, before it found us. Finally, we emerged from the crawl space, bursting through the ground floor of the house. We scrambled to our feet and ran, not daring to look back. As we reached a safe distance, we glanced back at the abandoned house. The creature's malevolent presence seemed to linger. "We can never tell anyone about this," Harris said breathlessly, and I nodded in agreement, for our peers would think us crazy, and we'd probably risk losing our jobs. We knew that no one would believe our account of that night, and so we kept our encounter with this warped hominid creature a secret, a shared experience that bound us in a way that no one else could understand. A good while later, we dreamt up the idea of fabricating a crime to get a larger force into the house, which we eventually did. However, that's when the most disturbing part of our story was revealed. The building was completely empty, and 2 large back doors that had previously been chained closed were discovered broken open. This unknown thing had escaped into the night, likely searching for a new dements to haunt. Number 2, the Graffiti Artist. The city was no stranger to graffiti art, but the recent surge of chilling images left a haunting impression. As a police officer patrolling these streets, I couldn't ignore the disturbing scenes painted on the walls. Each artwork depicted a horrifying scene, and to my disbelief, they seemed to come to life at night. Reports of strange occurrences with said graffiti flooded the precinct. Victims from their scenes found dead in eerily accurate ways. Panic spread like wildfire, and the graffiti artist became the prime suspect behind a string of disturbing incidents. My partner, Officer Mitchell, and I were determined to track down this mysterious artist and put an end to the madness. We spent sleepless nights poring over surveillance footage and combing through the city's underground art scene, but to no avail. One night, however, we received a call about another graffiti piece discovered near an old factory. We rushed to this scene, hearts pounding with anticipation. "There it is," Mitchell pointed to a gruesome mural showing a victim lying lifeless on the factory floor, surrounded by shadowy figures. "I don't remember any crime like this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Mitchell nodded grimly. "Let's focus on finding this mystery artist." With a renewed determination, we continued our investigation, interviewing witnesses and trying to piece together any clues. But the artist remained elusive, like a ghost haunting the city's walls. One night, we received a tip from a local street performer who claimed to have seen the graffiti artist in action. Following this lead, we arrived at an abandoned warehouse, adrenaline coursing through our veins. As we explored about, to our shock, in the dim light, we caught a glimpse of a figure, their back turned to us, crouched in front of a blank wall. However, before we could approach, they vanished like smoke into the surrounding darkness, leaving behind a haunting mural that almost seemed to pulsate. "They're taunting us," Mitchell growled, frustration evident in his voice. These graffiti scenes grew more and more macabre, each one unfolding into reality with eerie accuracy. Soon, our city lived in fear, and even we, the officers, couldn't shake the unease that gripped at our hearts. As days turned into weeks, hopes of catching this artist waned. It was as if they had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only their haunting artwork as a trail. One sleepless night, I found myself staring at a picture of the latest graffiti piece in my office. It showed a victim trapped in a maze of dark alleyways, surrounded by shadows closing in, and like the scene before it discovered in the warehouse, it seemed that this one hadn't transpired in reality yet. Yet. That word. Suddenly it hit me. The graffiti artist wasn't depicting crimes, they were predicting them. They'd become diviners of terror yet to unfold, and were using their talent to foretell the fates of these victims. "Mitchell," I called, urgency in my voice. "I think I know how they operate." I showed him the graffiti piece and explained my theory. We realized that each mural served as a blueprint for the next crime, a carefully orchestrated scene designed to strike fear into the hearts of both the victims and the city. Armed with this new insight, we devised a plan to catch the artist in the act. We set up surveillance around areas that had been depicted, waiting for their chilling creations to come to life. And one night, our patience paid off. The city was blanketed in darkness, and we caught a glimpse of the graffiti artist just as he'd started his work. We closed in silently, slowly, our hearts pounding as we cornered them just as they'd finished their latest masterpiece. "Hands in the air," Mitchell shouted, his gun trained on the artist. For the first time, there was nowhere to escape, and we saw the face behind these haunting images. It was that of a young man, nothing remarkable or special, but his eyes. His eyes were as black as the starry sky. "How is this possible?" I asked him, my voice trembling with confusion. The artist just stared back at us, unyielding, and dryly proclaimed, "Because this city deserves to see its true nature." Number 1. The Haunting Call. In the quiet hours of the night, the police station's phone lines came alive with a series of distress calls, each more chilling than the last. The anonymous voice on the other end was desperate, pleading for help, yet their location remained unknown. My heart raced with each call, and I could feel an inexplicable sense of dread creeping in. My partner, Detective Evans, and I worked tirelessly to trace these calls, but they seemed to elude our efforts, bouncing from one location to another. It was as if the source was moving, always staying one step ahead of us. Then one fateful night, the call's location stayed stationary and led us to a seemingly abandoned house on the outskirts of town. The old residence stood eerily still in the darkness, its windows boarded up and its walls covered in a thick layer of dust and cobwebs. "Are you sure someone's in there, or that the phone lines even work?" Evans asked, casting a cautious glance at the lifeless structure. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "They have to be. The calls are coming from inside, and we have to check it out." We approached this house with our flashlights at the ready, our beams of light cutting through the pitch-black night. The air around the house was heavy with an unsettling silence, broken only by the faint sound of a phone ringing from within the empty halls. As we stepped inside, the atmosphere grew more stifling. The floorboards creaked beneath our feet, and a cold breeze whispered through the decaying rooms. The phone, wherever it was, rang again, and the sound echoed through the hollow halls. We finally located the device in a back room. My hands trembled as I picked up the receiver, hesitating before answering. "Hello?" I spoke into the receiver, my voice barely above a whisper. Instead of a voice on the other end, all I heard were haunting whispers and ghostly laughter. My heart sank as I realized there was no one there, yet the calls continued, mocking us from the unknown. Evans and I combed through every inch of the house, searching for any sign of life or a hidden phone. But the more we looked, the more it seemed like an impossible puzzle. With each call, with each ring, whispers around us began to grow louder, and a diabolical laughter sounded somewhere in the distance. It was as if the house itself was alive with malevolence, feeding from our fear. "Let's get out of here," Evans suggested, his voice uneasy. I nodded, feeling the weight of the night pressing down on me. As we made our way to the exit, the phone rang again, but this time it was different. The sound came from upstairs somewhere. "We have to check it out," I said, my voice resolute. We climbed the creaky staircase, our hearts pounding in our chests. The ringing grew louder, the sound now accompanied by a chilling melody that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. With trembling hands, I pushed open the door to the room where the ringing was coming from, and what we saw left us paralyzed. The room was empty, but a phone lay on the floor still ringing, as if it had just been dropped. Whispers and laughter filled the air here, surrounding us with a sense of impending doom. "What is going on?" Evans whispered, his eyes wide with terror and confusion. Before I could respond, the phone on the floor stopped ringing, and the room fell into an unnerving silence. Then, out of nowhere, a piercing scream emanated from thin air, echoing through the empty house. Terrified, we rushed downstairs, desperate to escape the haunting situation and the horrors within those walls. And as we reached the front door, the phone rang again, its shrill sound lingering in the night. Without looking back, we ran into the darkness, leaving the haunted house behind us. But the chilling whispers and ghostly laughter followed us, haunting our every step. The calls continued for weeks, tormenting us night after night at the station. Their source remained a mystery, and the unsettling truth behind the haunting remained elusive. As officers of the law, we were used to facing danger, but this haunting call was like nothing we'd ever encountered before. It was a relentless reminder that some mysteries were beyond even our grasps, and that the shadows held secrets we may never understand. Thanks for braving these 5 scary stories from police officers. If you enjoyed my terrifying fables, subscribe to my channel, like this upload, and share me with anyone you feel could use a good fright. I'll see you all next time.